Darrell Waltrip, do you enjoy life as a race commentator?
You know, Ted, it's so similar to what I did my whole life. I go to the racetrack every week just like I always did. I get there on Thursday. I have my motor coach in the lot with the drivers and owners. I hang out there with the guys, get a lot of good information, with people passing by. I get to go. I get to be at the track every weekend and watch the cars instead of drive the cars. That's the biggest difference. But I'm on the other side of the fence now. I'm up there in that TV booth looking down at the cars going around the track, and so many weekends and so many tracks I go to, I can just I just put myself right back down there in the racetrack, thinking about, boy, if I was driving that 11 car, I'd be kicking their butt. So a lot of things are different. Certainly, what I do on Sunday is different than when I drove, but there are so many similarities between being at the track, getting the information to do the race, knowing the track, knowing what's going to happen during the race, and then selling that, sending that out across to the TV land for people that can understand and enjoy it. I've got the idea. I've got the dream job. I don't want you to tell anybody. This isn't gonna air anywhere nearby. It's in a whole nother world, right?
Yeah.
I would do it for nothing.
Same as me. I do the
Yeah,
commentary in Sweden.
I don't want that to get around though, because my boss might be watching.
You said you were on the other side of the fence. Do you ever? Fences are for climbing over, aren't they? Do you ever feel the urge to make a comeback?
Occasionally. Yeah, it's funny you asked me that because I was talking to Troy Aikman. Troy had considered coming back, and Troy Aikman, a great quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, and he had considered coming out of retirement and playing again. There was a need, and he needed a quarterback, and he felt like he still had some good years in him. And I felt that way myself on a number of occasions. But then Troy and I started laughing. Yeah, but then we start to remember why we quit. And there's a time in your career. I probably went a couple of years too long, but I just didn't want to walk away. I still want to be a part of the sport. I still want to stay in it. That's why the job I have now is so great for me. It allows me to still be a part of the sport, to still be in it without having to drive the car every weekend. But I many occasions, particularly go to some of the short tracks, Martinsville. I always have an urge to race at Martinsville. That's one of my favorite tracks, Bristol. I love the short tracks. I was a short track ace, and that's all about finesse. The guy that can handle this thing right here the best and push that gas the nicest and softest and easiest, like you got an egg under your foot. And I was always really good at that. So, yeah, there are times when I'd trade what I'm doing now for a chance to get back out there and race, but not very many.
But there are other ways actually to be in racing. Your brother runs a team.
Yeah.
Do you ever get the urge to help him a little bit more hands-on?
So I get the urge all the time, but he doesn't seem to have the same feelings. I feel like there's a lot of ways and a lot of times that I could help him. See, that's the thing, Ted, when you're outside looking in, when you're up here in the booth looking down, you see a lot of things that the guys down there in the battle, they don't see. One of my favorite expressions is the blind obvious. If you're encompassed, if you're all down in the battle down there, and there's things going on around you that you don't realize or don't recognize, then there's nothing you can do about it. But when you're removed from that and you're up looking down and you say, that guy and this guy in this situation, you can be so much more. That's why I coach. That's why a coach is so valuable. A coach doesn't go out and play the game, but he watches the game and tells the players what they're doing wrong and what they need to do differently to be successful. And I think a lot of times, if Michael would only listen to me, that I could help him a lot. But by the way, you know the difference in he and I, don't you?
Yeah, he's younger.
No, I'm dumb and I know it.
Okay. I'll tell him that when we interview him. But there's another. Don't you want to be a coach for his team?
We have talked. It's not like we never talk, but he calls me old school. Everything that I start to relate to him, he says, DW, we don't do it that way anymore. And I'll give you a good example. We were taking some pictures the other day at the track, and a lady's camera quit working. And I said, ma'am, maybe it's out of film. And he poked me in the ribs and about knocked me. He said, don't say that. You're dating yourself. He said, cameras don't have film anymore. Well, that's kind of how we relate to each other. I'm a computer, but I'm an old computer. So when you turn me on, it takes me a while to get lit up. And when you push in numbers or buttons or whatever, it takes me a while to get that information out. Michael, on the other hand, he's got a lot more gigabytes than I got. Yeah. He comes on, he's ready to roll, rock and roll right now. I got all the same information. It just takes me a little bit longer to get it out there for him. But old school is good. It served me well, and I think there's a place in there where you can marry old school with the way they do things now and actually have a very much more successful team than if you try to just do it one way.
Yeah, I mean, by looking at the figures, you have a lot more wins than he has.
Yeah, just be sure and remind him of that, will you?
Speaking of wins, which was your sweetest victory ever?
Boy, there's all kind of there's milestones in your career. Certainly, the first one, I won the Nashville, Tennessee in 1975 in car number 17, my own race car, and Jake Elder was my crew chief. Now, fast forward to 1992. What is that? 20 years later, and odd. And the last race I won was the Southern 500 at Darlington, and Jake Elder was my crew chief. Mm-hmm. But I went through a lot of crew chiefs from my first win to my last one, but it was just ironic that Jake was there for me on my first win. He was there with me on my last win, and I always thought that was special. But when my daughter was born in '87, I won Martinsville. When Jessica was born in '87, I won Martinsville. Sarah was born in '92. I won Bristol. So people started to come up to me and say, maybe you need to have more kids. No, I didn't think that was a very good idea. Stevie and I didn't, but we're older parents, and we tell our kids all the time, yes, when people say you have lovely grandchildren, it kind of embarrasses Stevie and I, but we've learned to live with it.
And what about the win at Daytona?
Certainly you got to have a Daytona win. Mm-hmm. That's always a kind of a crown jewel of all the 84 wins. That's certainly at the top.
You didn't get a kid then?
No, I didn't get a kid then. Jessica was like a year and a half old, I think. But I'd been trying. That was the numerical win. That was my 17th try. We were in pit 17. I think the race was on the 17th. The purse was $1.7 million. My name has 17 letters in it. Jessica was born on the 17th. And so as I got into that weekend and things started to unfold, the number 17 just kept popping up. I went to play in a golf tournament. They said, what's your handicap? I said, 17. And so that number kept popping up, and I told Hammond before the race started, I said, you're not going. Here's what's going to happen. We're either going to finish first or we're going to finish 17th. I'm not sure which.
It turned out okay.
It turned out just fine, thank you, yes.
You said something about you being old school. What do you think about NASCAR? Is it evolving too much into a modern era racing series? I think
one of the things that has hurt us a little bit is when Brian France came in to run NASCAR, he wanted to fix everything that was wrong with it in one swoop. He wanted to come in and we started freezing the field, and we had electronic timing and scoring up and down pit road. The pit road speeds were electronically enforced. The lucky dog, and so many things that the traditional fan had never experienced before. I think, and the new car was totally different. So when Brian came in, everything he did needed to be done. I think it'd have been better if he'd have spaced it out a little bit more and let people get used to a change, digest it a little bit, and then make another change. But we changed so much so quickly that I think we alienated a lot of our core fans, our old fans, and the new fans didn't really care because they didn't know what was going on anyway. And so I think that's what happened, and now we're having to pay the price for that. Some of our fan base has shrunk down a little bit. Some of the older fans have kind of walked away, and we got to win them back. And you win them back with good racing. This is a performance-oriented business. If you don't perform on Sunday, you don't eat on Monday. It's just that simple. If you don't win races, if you don't run up front, you're not going to keep your job. Well, the sport's the same way. If we don't go to that racetrack, put cars on the racetrack and drivers out there that are passionate about what they do, and cars out there that can race side by side, slam and bam and rub paint and do all the things we used to do, people aren't going to watch. There's too many people have too many things to do. You can go to a football game, you go to whatever. There's so many other things that people can spend their entertainment dollars on. Plus, now you can watch it on the internet. You can listen to it on Sirius or XM radio. People have so many more options, so we have to be better than we've ever been before. The show's got to be better than it's ever been before. And the sport's got to be managed better than it's ever been before if we're going to get back some of the people we've lost.
I hope we do. How do you predict NASCAR is going to look in about 10, 15 years?
Um, I think here's what happens. It's about a 10-year cycle, sometimes a little bit longer. But if you look at the Petty Pearson era, that was in the late 60s and early 70s. And then you look at the Darrell Waltrip, Dale Earnhardt era. That was in the late 70s and into the 80s. And then you look at the Jeff Gordon era. That was in the late 90s and into the 2000s. So every 10 years we get a turnover. Every 10 years people say, boy, who's going to fill them shoes? And people, somebody always steps up. And, you know, now we have Kyle Busch. We have Joey Logano. We have a number of young athletes out there. Michael's got a couple of guys that he's got it waiting in the wings. Ryan Truex, Martin's brother, great kid. Trevor Bayne, another great kid. These kids are 18 years old. There's some kids running ARCA right now that are 18 and 19 years old. I think have a lot of potential in our sport. So every 10 years you get some of the older guys kind of fading away, and you get all these new kids that come along, and we got a whole new group of guys to cheer for.
I read somewhere about new drivers for Michael's team that Mika Salo, the Finn, was supposed to at least try out.
Well, you know, Toyota has so many connections and so many other forms of racing that if there's somebody out there that they feel like they owe an opportunity to, that has an interest in driving a Sprint Cup car or a Nationwide car or a truck, they like to give them an opportunity, let them try out and see how they do. You know, there's always a diamond in the rough. Nobody knew Jeff Gordon was going to be as great as he is. You couldn't have predicted 2 or 3 years ago that Kyle Busch might mature and blossom the way he has. There's always that one guy out there somewhere that nobody's discovered yet. And so it's good to give other drivers from other forms of racing a chance. But if you look at Dario, I mean, Dario won the championship after he went back to IRL. He couldn't find his hands. He couldn't find his butt with both hands down here. It just didn't. He just wasn't. He never got comfortable. I don't think he ever was in the right car with the right people. But in an Indy car, you can't beat him. And so I think a lot of guys come intrigued by one of these big old heavy stock cars. But I think once they drive a little bit and they say, "Man, that thing's a beast," and they're hard to handle.
Yeah, there's several examples on that.
Oh yeah.
One final question: what do you know about Sweden?
Well, let me see. Volvos. I happen to be a Volvo dealer, and so I know a little bit about that product. Some great drivers have come from Sweden. Don't ask me to name any of them. I just know that they do. Ronnie Peterson.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I know there's been some great drivers from Sweden. I love the people.
Kenny Breck.
Oh yeah, Kenny Breck.
Yeah.
See, Kenny Breck was another one, and God, I love Kenny Breck, and it's too bad what happened to him. But he's still, you know, he was doing a great job, and he can play a heck of a mean guitar. And so, there's been some great drivers from Sweden, and it's always good to have that international flair, no matter where you go.
Thank you so much, and we're really looking forward to next season when you say those famous words.
You mean boogity boogity boogity? Let's go racing, Ted.